Hello! Now we're going to continue practical lesson with 3D modeling. This lesson will be led for you by Senior Lecturer of the Department of Architecture and Design, Domana Inessa. The title of today's lesson is Modifiers. In this chapter you will learn about modifiers. As the name indicates, modifiers are used to modify an object. They enable you to create models that would otherwise be quite difficult to create. After completing this chapter, you'll be able to use modifiers, understand the types of modifiers, and create complex objects using modifiers. Let's start. Modifiers and Modifier Stack. In Max, the modifiers are used to modify an object. You can apply more than one modifier to an object. The modifiers can also be used to modify the objects at sub-object levels. To apply a modifier to an object, select the object in the viewport and then choose the Modify tab in the Command panel. The modifier list drop-down list will be displayed as shown in figure. To view the options in the drop-down list, click on the arrow on the right of Modifier list, as shown in next figure. Following are some points that you should remember about modifiers. First, when you apply modifiers to the objects, they are stored in a stack and displayed as a stack in the Modify panel. You can change the order of the modifiers in the stack to change the effect of the modifier. You can also collapse the stack to make the changes permanent. Second, you can apply any number of modifiers to an object. Third, when you delete a modifier, its effect on the objects also vanishes. Fourth, you can copy modifiers from an object to another. Fifth, the order of the modifier in the stack determines the final effect. Each modifier in the stack affects the modifier that are applied after it. 6. You can apply modifiers to sub-objects levels. And 7. You can toggle the effect of the modifiers from the stack display. There are different types of modifiers in this list. Select the modifier that you want to apply to the object. The selected modifier will be displayed in the Modifier Stack along with various rollouts in the Modify panel. To modify the objects, refer to figure. And so let's look at the structure of Modifier Stack. Note, the modifiers are displayed in the modifier list drop-down list based on the selection of the objects in the viewport. In the modifier stack, there is a bulb-like button. Refer to figure. It is used to show or hide the effects of the modifier in the viewport. By default, this button is active. Click on this button to make it inactive. The button will become dark and the effect of the modifier will not be displayed in the viewport. The buttons at the bottom of the modifier stack are used to manage the modifier stack. Those buttons are discussed next. The Pin Stack button is used to log the modifier stack for the selected object in the viewport. If you choose the Pin Stack button for the selected objects in the viewport, and then select another object in the viewport, the Modify tab will display the modifier stack and their rollouts for the pinned object only. Next, the Show End Result On/Off toggle button is used to toggle the effect of all the modifiers in the modifier stack on the selected objects in the viewport. If this button is deactivated, then the selected objects in the viewport will display only the effect of the selected modifier in the modifier stack. The Make Unique button is used to convert an instanced object into a unique copy. On making the instanced object unique, they become independent, and you can modify them independently without affecting the other objects in the viewport. By default, this button is inactive. When you create the instance of an object, this button will be activated. Select the instanced object in the viewport and choose the Make Unique button in the modifier stack to make it unique. The Remove Modifier from the Stack button is used to remove the selected modifier from the modifier stack. The Configure Modifier Sets button is used to control the display of the modifiers in the modifier stack. Note: if you change the order of the modifiers applied to an object in the modifier stack, the objects will display different effects. The object should have more number of segments to get the best effect of the applied modifier. Transform, such as move, rotate, and scale, are the most basic manipulation of the 3D objects. Unlike most of the modifiers, transforms are independent of internal structure of an object. The transformation values are stored in a matrix called transformation matrix. This matrix is applied to the entire object. The matrix is applied after all object space modifiers have been applied, but before the wall space modifiers. Once you create an object and apply a modifier to it, Ffd evaluates the flow as per the table given below. You can access modifiers from the Modifiers menu, the modifier list from the Modify panel, and the Applicable Modifier Set menu. To keep all modifiers organized, Ffd has grouped them in the Modifier menu. The following table summarizes the options available in the Modifier menu. Using the Modify panel. To apply a modifier to an object, select the object in the scene and then go to the Modify panel. The name of the selected object appears on the top of the Modify panel. Apply a modifier to the object by using one of the following methods. First, choose a modifier from the modifier list available in the Modify panel. You can either use mouse to click on the modifier or use the keyboard. For example, if you are looking for the mirror modifier, type MI, the modifiers whose name starts with MI, in this case the mirror, modifier only, appear in the modifier list. Now, you can click on the modifier or press Enter to apply it. Second option. Choose a modifier from the Modifiers menu. Third option. If the modifier buttons are available on the Modify panel, click one of the buttons. The modifier stack is a list of modifiers that you apply to an object. The stack is evaluated from bottom to top. The first entry in the stack from bottom is always the object. The object space modifiers appears above the object type. The wall space modifiers and space verbs bound to the objects are placed at the top. You can use the stack in one of the following ways. Find a particular object and adjust its parameters using rollouts. Change the order of modifiers. Deactivate the effect of modifier in the stack, viewport, or bot. Select component, such as gizmo or center of a modifier, and delete modifiers. Let's take a closer look at some of the modifiers related to the Object Space Modifiers group. Bend modifier. The bend modifier is used to bend an object up to 360 degrees along the X, Y, or Z axis. To apply the bend modifier on an object, select the object and choose Modifiers, Parametric Deformers, Bend from the menu bar. Alternatively, you can select the object in the viewport and choose the Modify tab from the Command panel. The Modifier List drop-down list will be displayed. Select Object Space Modifiers, Bend from the Modifier List drop-down list. The bend modifier will be displayed in the modifier stack. Also, the parameters rollout will be displayed in the Modify panel. The areas in the parameters rollout will be discussed next. So the parameters rollout of the bend modifier. It is bend area. The options in the bend area are used to set the parameters to bend on objects. The angle spinner is used to define the angle of the bend along X, Y, or Z axis. The direction spinner is used to define the direction of the bend. Bend axis area. The options in the bend axis area is used to define the axis which needs to be bent. By default, the Z radio button is selected. As a result, the objects will be bent above the Z axis. You can also select the X or Y radio button. Note that the axis to be bent should be local to the bend gizmo instead of the selected object. Limits area. The options in the limits area are used to apply constraints to the bend effect. Select the limit effect checkbox to make the options in this area active. By default, value in the upper limit and lower limit spinners is 0. The lower limit and upper limit spinners are used to specify the bending limits of the modifier from its center point. Taper modifier. The taper modifier is used to taper an object by scaling it on both ends. After applying this modifier, one side of the object will be scaled up and another will be scaled down. To apply the taper modifier, choose Modifiers, Parametric Deformers, Taper from the menu bar, or the taper modifier will be displayed in the Modifier Stack. Also, the parameters rollout will be displayed in the Modify panel. The areas in this rollout we'll discuss next. Taper area. The options in the taper area is used to set the parameters for scaling the shape of an object. The amount spinner in the taper area is used to define the amount of taper. The curve spinner is used to define the curve applied to the gizmo, and it helps in creating different shapes of the taper. You can set the values of the amount and curve spinners from -10 to 10. Taper axis area. The primary group in taper axis area is used to define the central axis of the taper. By default, the Z radio button is selected in the primary group. As a result, the Z-axis is used as the central axis for the taper. You can also specify the X or Y-axis as the central axis for the taper by selecting the X or Y radio button in the primary group. The effect group is used to define the direction of the taper from the primary axis. By default, the XY radio button is selected in the effect group. As a result, the direction of the taper will be along the XY plane. You can also specify the direction of taper along the X or Y axis by selecting X or Y radio button from the effects group. The radio buttons in the effect group change according to the selection of the primary axis. You can select the Symmetry checkbox in this area to create a symmetrical taper around the primary axis. Limits area. The options in this area are same as discussed in the Bend modifier. Noise modifier. The noise modifier is used to generate disturbances on the surface of an object to create irregular surfaces. It can also be used to animate water or wavy surfaces. To apply the noise modifier, select the object in the viewport and choose the Modify tab in the Command panel. Now, select the Noise modifier from the Object Space Modifier category in the Modifier list, drop-down list. You can also choose Modifiers, Parametric Deformers, Noise from the menu bar. The Noise modifier will be displayed in the Modifier Stack, and the parameters rollout will also be displayed in the Modify panel. Next, you need to use the options in the parameters rollout. To apply the effects of the noise modifier on the select object, those options we'll discuss. Parameters rollout. The options in this rollout are used to generate noise effects in an object. Noise area. The options in this area are used to define the appearance of the surface of the object on applying the noise modifier. Set the value in the seed spinner to specify the starting point for generating the noise randomly in the object. Set the value in the scale spinner to specify the size of noise effects. By default, the value in the scale spinner is 100. A higher value in the spinner produces smoother noise effects and a lower value produces scraggy noise effects. By default, the fractal checkbox is cleared. Select the fractal checkbox to produce the fractal-based noise effects. When you select the fractal checkbox, the roughness and iteration spinner get activated, that are used to set the fractal effects in the noise. Set the lower value in the roughness spinner to produce smooth fractal effects in noise. Set the higher value in the roughness spinner to produce rough fractal effects in noise. The value in the roughness spinner varies from 0 to 1.0. Set the value in the iteration spinner to apply the fractal effects multiple times. By default, the value in the iteration spinner is 1.0. It varies from 1.0 to 10.0. Remember, the number of segments in an object should be more to better the effect generated by the noise modifier. And secondly, you can also create the terrain objects using this modifier. Strength area. The options in this area are used to specify the strength of the noise effects. By default, the value in X, Y, and Z spinners is 0. That produces no noise effects in the object. Set the value in those spinners to generate the strength of the noise effects. Animation area. The options in this area are used to animate the noise effects of the object. To view the animation's effects, you need to select the Animate Noise checkbox. Set the value in the frequency spinner to specify the speed of the animation of noise waves. The lower value produces a slow animation and the higher value produces a fast animation. Set the value in the Phase spinner to set the start point and the end point of the wave animation along with the frames in the time slider. Twist modifier. The twist modifier is used to produce the swirling effect on an object. To apply the twist modifier, select an object in the viewport. Select the twist modifier from the Object Space Modifiers category in the Modifier List drop-down list. Alternatively, choose the modifier's parametric deformers twist from the menu bar. The twist modifier will be displayed in the Modifier Stack and the parameters rollout will also be displayed in the Modify panel. Next, you need to use the options in the parameters rollout to apply the effects of the twist modifier to the object. Let's discuss parameters rollout next. Parameters rollout. This rollout is used to set the parameters to generate swirling effects on an object. The areas in this rollout we will discuss. Twist area. Set the value in the angle spinner to specify the amount of twist in degrees along the select axis in the twist axis area. Set the value in the bias spinner to shift the twist at one of the ends of the object. By default, the value in the spinner is 0. We specify that the twist is uniform along the length of the object. It varies from 100 to -100. Twist axis area. By default, the Z radio button is selected. As a result, the object will twist along the Z-axis. Select the X or Y radio button to twist the objects along the X-axis or the Y-axis respectively. And limits area. The options in this area are used to define the portion of an object to which the twist effects will be applied. Select the Limit Effect checkbox to apply the limits to the twist effects of the object. Set the value in the upper limit spinner to specify the upper limit for the twist effect. Set the value in the lower limit spinner to specify the lower limit for the twist effect. Displace modifier. This modifier pushes the object's geometry to reshape it using a map or bitmap texture. This modifier allows you to apply the effect using two methods. Apply the effect directly onto the objects using the strength and decay values, and apply the effect using the grayscale values of a bitmap image. You can use this modifier to simulate magnetic push-like effect by animating its gizmos. The 4 gizmos provided by this modifier: it's planar, cylindrical, spherical, and shrink wrap. These gizmos are used to distribute the force specified by the strength and decay values. Create a plane primitive with 30 lengths and with segments, add a displace modifier to the stack, and then set strength to -100 and decay to -0.66 in the parameters rollout of the modifier. Choose spherical from the map group of the rollout and then select gizmo sub-object from the stack. Now use the Move tool to see the effect of this modifier. You can also use a bitmap or map to produce this effect. Click None associated with the map control in the image group to open the Material Map browser. Double-click on Noise to select this map. Select Planar from the map group. The effect of the modifier is displayed in the viewport. To change the parameters of the noise map, drag the map button to the material editor. Choose Instance from the dialog box displayed. Now double-click on the map node to view its properties. Change the properties as per need. Lattice Modifier. The lattice modifier is used to convert the segments or edges of an object or shape into wireframes or cylindrical struts. To apply the lattice modifier, select the objects or shape in the viewport and choose the Modify tab in the command panel. Now select the lattice modifier from the Object Space Modifiers category in the Modifier List drop-down list. Alternatively, choose Modifiers Parametric Deformers Lattice. From the menu bar, the modifier will be displayed in the Modifier Stack, and its effect will be displayed on the object. The parameters rollout will also be displayed below the modifier stack. Now you need to use the options in the parameters rollout to modify the effects of the lattice modifier. Those options are discussed next. Parameters rollout. The options in this rollout are used to specify whether wireframes will be displayed on joins, struts, or on both of them. The areas in this rollout we'll discuss. Geometry area. In this area, the Apply to Entire Object checkbox is selected by default. As a result, wireframe is applied to all the segments or edges of the object. If you clear this checkbox, then the wireframes will be applied only to the selected segments or edges of the object. By default, the But radio button is selected to apply wireframes on both struts and joins. Select the Joins Only from Vertex radio button to display the wireframes only on the joins generated from the vertex of the object. Select the Struts Only from Edges radio button to display the wireframes only on the struts generated from the edges of the object. Struts area. The options in this area are activated only if the Struts Only from Edges or both radio button is selected in the geometry area. Set the value in the radius spinner to define the radius of the struts. Set the value in the segment spinner to specify the number of segments along the struts. Set the value in the side spinner to specify the number of sides around the circumference of the struts. Set the value in the material ID spinner to specify the material ID for the struts to apply the material. Joins area. The options in this area are activated only if the Joins Only from Vertex or But radio button is selected in the geometry area. There are 3 radio buttons in the geodesic base type group that specify the type of polyhedron to be used for the joins. By default, the Octa radio button is selected and is used to create the octahedron joins. Select the Tetra or the Icosa radio button to create the tetrahedron or icosahedron joins, respectively. The other options are the same as discussed in the struts area. Ffd Modifiers. Ffd means free form deformation. In Autodesk Max, the Ffd modifiers are used to deform objects by creating a box around them. This box is made up of lattice and control points. You can deform an object using those control points and lattice. There are 5 different types of Ffd modifiers. Ffd 2 on 2 on 2, Ffd 3 on 3 on 3, Ffd 4 on 4 on 4, Ffd box, and Ffd cylinder. The different types of Ffd modifiers are based on the number of control points. The Ffd 2 on 2 modifier provides a lattice box with 2 control points on all the edges of an object. Similarly, the Ffd 3-on-3-on-3 and Ffd 4-on-4 modifiers provide the lattice boxes with 3 and 4 control points. The Ffd box and Ffd cylinder modifiers are used with the box-shaped and cylinder-shaped objects. In those modifiers, you can adjust the number of control points in the lattice box in the parameters rollout. To apply the Ffd modifiers, select an object in the viewport and then select one of the Ffd modifiers from the Object Space Modifiers category in the Modifier List drop-down list. Alternatively, choose Modifiers Free-Form Deformers from the menu bar to select the Ffd modifiers. The lattice box with the control points will be displayed around the selected objects in the viewport. The selected Ffd modifier will be displayed in the Modifier Stack. Also, the Ffd parameters rollout will be displayed below the Modifier Stack in the Modify panel. To deform the object using the Ffd modifiers, you need to use the sub-objects level of the modifier in the Modifier Stack. The sub-object levels and Ffd parameters rollout we will discuss next. Sub-object levels. To view the sub-object levels of the selected modifier, you need to expand the modifier in the Modifier Stack by clicking on the plus sign on its left as shown on the example. There are 3 sub-object levels: control points, lattice, and set volume. Control points. The control points are vertices of the lattice box that surround the objects after applying the Ffd modifier. Select the control point sub-object level. The level will be activated and now you will be able to select the control points of the lattice in the viewport. Next, select the control points and manipulate them using the transforming tools such as Select and Move or Select and Scale, and so on. When you transform the control points, the shape of the lattice box will be modified. Lattice. Select the lattice sub-object level. The lattice box will be highlighted in the viewport. Next, you can reshape the objects by moving, rotating, or scaling the lattice box. Set volume. If you select the sub-object level, then the control points of the lattice box will turn green in color. You can select those green control points and move them to fit according to the shape of the objects without affecting the object. Ffd parameters rollout. This rollout is displayed in the Modify panel. The most commonly used areas in this rollout are discussed next. By default, the lattice checkbox is selected. It is used to display the lines connecting the control points of the lattice box. On clearing the checkbox, only the control points of the lattice will be displayed in the viewport. Select the Source Volume checkbox to display the original shape of the lattice box. If you clear the checkbox, then the modified shape of the lattice box will be displayed in the viewport. Deform Area. By default, the only In-Volume Radio button is selected. It is used to deform the part of the object that is inside the lattice box. On selecting the All Vertex Radio button, the entire object, whether it is inside or outside the lattice box, can be deformed. Control Points Area. This area is used to modify the control points of the lattice box. Choose the Reset button to bring all control points to their original position. If you animate the control points, then a controller will be assigned to each control point. Choose the Animate All button to place the controllers in the track view for each control point. In the track view, you can view, edit, copy, or adjust the number of animation keys at the same time. You will learn more about adjusting the animation keys in the later chapters. Choose the Conform to Shape button to bring the Ffd control points to the intersection of the objects with a straight line from the object center to the original location of control points. The Inside Points and Outside Points checkboxes are selected by default. If you clear the Inside Points checkbox, then the control points that are inside the lattice box will not be affected. If you clear the Outside Points checkbox, the control points that are outside the lattice box will not be affected. Set the value in the Offset spinner to specify the distance of the control points from the surface of the object. Dimensions Area. This area is available only for the Ffd box and Ffd cylinder modifiers, and is used to define the number of control points in the lattice box. Choose the Set Number of Points button. The Set Ffd Dimensions dialog box will be displayed. Set the value in the Length, Width, and Height spinner to specify the number of control points on each axis of the lattice box. Note that for the Ffd cylinder modifiers, the spinners displayed would be side, radial, and height. In this lesson, we got acquainted with just a small group of modifiers that work with standard and improved primitives belonging to the Object Space Modifiers group. Some groups of modifiers working only with editable poly objects, and some of them working only with splines and NURBS objects. Some modifiers will work with maps and materials that are assigned to objects. We will consider other groups of modifiers in the following lessons. And in this lesson, we got acquainted with the concept of modifiers and how to use them.